Okay, I think we should probably get started. So hello and thank you for joining us today for the latest Society for the Environment Spotlight webinar. This month we are focused on the Chartered Environmentalist registration with the Institution of Chemical Engineers. So my name is Phil Underwood. I'm the Engagement Manager here at the Society for the Environment. I'm just here to give you an overview of who the Society for the Environment are, what links us to IChemE, and the basics of what the Chartered Environmentalist registration is. I'm delighted today to be joined by Steve Brading from the IChemE and 4 Chartered Environmentalists here to share their insights into the CEnv registration. So let's start with a look at who the Society for the Environment are. So in short, we believe that proven, competent environmental professionals across all sectors are key to a sustainable future. In the same way that a competent engineer is required to keep a power station standing, a competent environmental professional is required to ensure sustainable biodiversity net gain or to implement sustainable low carbon technology and processes and many, many other things. This doesn't mean that you need to be in charge of the environmental impact of the entire project or site, and sustainability also doesn't need to be your core role. You can be an engineer or a scientist, but incorporate sound environmental good practice into your work. So our core role is to register competent environmental professionals who have met and continue to meet a high level of competence in their environmental work and their overall professionalism. There are currently nearly 8,000 registered environmental professionals known as our registrants. Hopefully many of you watching today will join them in the next few weeks or months. We do all this in partnership with 29 professional bodies who are known as our member bodies. So there are 3 professional registrations that we offer, which you can see on your screen now. They are the Registered Environmental Technician, the Registered Environmental Practitioner, and the Chartered Environmentalist. Today, we are focusing on the CEnv registration, which is Chartered Environmentalist registration. Okay, so if you remember that we have 29 member bodies, now 24 of those are key to you becoming a registered environmental professional and a chartered environmentalist. To apply and continue as a registrant, you must be a member of one of these professional bodies, and you'll apply for your registration through that membership, not directly with the Society for the Environment. As you can see, IChemE are one of those, and you can apply for CEnv registration, which is why you are here today. And this creates the principal link between SocEnv and IChemE. But beyond that, beyond SocEnv granting a license to IChemE to award CEnv registration to their relevant members, IChemE are also members of the society. So we work in partnerships to drive forward environmental good practice and support each other's efforts to champion and develop professionals in this space. So let's talk about some benefits. So the key benefits that came out of our registrant survey in 2021, which is our latest one, were increased credibility with clients and stakeholders, increased self-confidence, and increased career opportunities. So the credibility theme always comes out on top in all of our surveys, and it's a huge benefit. With the CEnv letters after your name, you are instantly telling people that you have been externally verified as a highly knowledgeable, up-to-date professional when it comes to environmental good practice, leadership, and technical ability. There may also be financial benefits, depending on which sectors you work in and who you work for and so on. But one of our largest groups of registrants is from the Institution of Environmental Sciences, and in their recent member survey, they found that CEnv members earned, on average, around 33% more than other members. But it's not just individuals that benefits, employers benefit as well. With proven staff competence, it helps them win work, improves their brand, and demonstrates their staff that are working on projects are at the top of their game. Now, to wrap things up from me, given that you're all tuned into this webinar, you're likely to have a degree of knowledge when it comes to environmental impacts and opportunities within the chemical engineering sector. So I'm not going to go through those. I am definitely not an expert in that. It's the question at the foot of the screen that interests me the most. Who makes the decisions that impacts the environment? And beyond chemical engineering, who makes the environmental decisions across all sectors and disciplines? So say you're a chartered environmentalist with IChemE, you have a high level of environmental competence This puts you on par with nearly 8,000 other chartered environmentalists from a vast range of sectors and different roles and across the world, all making evidence-based decisions with proven competence and professionalism. You're essentially part of a global community of professionals who have committed to use their expertise to address environmental challenges and progress opportunities. The CEnv registration brings you together, and we think this is hugely important to creating a more sustainable world. And that links nicely back to my almost opening slide and the purpose of the Society for the Environment. And that's it from me, really. That's a very brief overview of the Society for the Environment and what the Chartered Environmentalist registration is. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Steve, if that's okay.
Thanks, Phil. Good afternoon to everyone. My name's Steve Brading. I'm the Associate Director of Marketing Communications at IChemE. I'd like to firstly thank you all for joining, and also I think we're going to find this a stimulating and hopefully thought-provoking session. We have 4 excellent speakers who will talk about the Chartered Environmentalist registration and how it's helped them with their career development. We're going to give a brief introduction to each of our speakers, and as Phil said earlier, if you have any questions, put them into the question and answer area, and we'll have a session at the end of the final presentation. I'm also pleased to announce that David Lloyd Roach, IChemE's Director of Qualifications, has also joined the meeting and will be available to answer any questions about the application process. So I'm just going to start with a brief introduction to each of the speakers. Firstly, Sejal Dixon, who's the Director of the Sustainability and Climate Change Service Line at WSP. Sejal manages a national team of over 120 consultants at WSP, supporting clients with sustainable finance, energy and carbon strategy and reporting, climate resilience and compliance. There are plenty of there under Sejal's remit. As well as providing overall leadership, Sejal remains heavily involved in projects and key client management and leads the growth and development of work within the industrial sector. Sejal will then be followed by Caireen Hargreaves, who's the Product Environmental Sustainability Lead at AstraZeneca. Caireen has worked in the pharmaceutical industry for more than 20 years. I'm sure she won't mind me saying that. A chemical engineer by background, she has held roles in operations, R&D, and global safety, health and environment across the UK and in Sweden. She currently leads AstraZeneca's Product Environmental Sustainability team in global safety, health and environment, driving strategic efforts to ensure the environmental safety of all AstraZeneca products. Caireen will then be followed by Alan Harper, who's the Principal Consultant at Stratosirius Technologies. Alan started his career at ICI, where he challenged outdated practices and introduced new technological fixes for long-standing problems. Since then, Alan has worked in several roles within industry and academia, but always with environmental, energy, conservation and sustainability themes in mind. And then our last speaker will be Derek McNab, who's the Managing Director of Mabet. Derek is a Fellow of the Institution of Chemical Engineers, a Chartered Engineer and Chartered Environmentalist. As Managing Director of Mabet, he leads over 100 staff delivering a wide range of planning, design, environment, engineering and safety services to protect people and the planet. Derek is also a visiting professor at the University of Strathclyde, where he has developed a range of environmental related courses for both undergraduates and postgraduate chemical engineering degrees. So hopefully you agree we've got a great lineup there, and we're going to get some very interesting perspectives. So I'd now like to hand over to Sejal.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thanks, Phil. So good afternoon, everyone. Really good to be here today. As Steve mentioned, my name's Sejal Dixon, and I head the Sustainability and Climate Change business in WSP. For those of you that haven't come across WSP before, we're a professional services firm. We're operating most countries around the world. There's about 70,000 of us. And here in the UK, I'm part of the Earth and Environment business. So that's providing environmental support from everything from contaminated land and remediation through to environmental planning. So EIAs, environmental impact assessments for major infrastructure projects. We've got numerous noise consultants, air quality specialists, ecologists, all the ISTs. And my area of focus is sustainability and climate change. So we're quite a diverse team, in fairness. We because we work in sustainability right across the different sectors, we've got people with a lot of different technical backgrounds. So we've got structural engineers and architects that are working on sustainability in buildings and developments. So working at that very early stage concept planning to kind of embed sustainability, embodied carbon, social value into the projects. We've got civil engineers who work on whole life carbon assessments for built and infrastructure projects. We've got process engineers like myself who work predominantly with the industrial sector. So everything from pulling together environmental permit applications for the Environment Agency, working with clients to kind of advise them on what the best available techniques are with regards to pollution prevention, control and pollution abatement. But also more recently with net zero, obviously being a phrase coined by everyone at the moment, decarbonisation. So their pathway to decarbonisation, how does an industrial operation actually meet net zero? So a wide range of different services. I suppose in terms of my journey to how I kind of became the head of this team. So I started my career in 1995. So I graduated from Newcastle University as a chemical engineer. And for the first 5 or 6 years, I was predominantly in a design and commissioning environment. And I kind of fell into the environmental sector by chance, I suppose. So I worked for an engineering consultancy, but they also provided process safety and environmental support to clients. So I became more involved with those projects, and about 2004 moved to WSP. With it being a much larger consultancy, I became involved with much larger infrastructure projects and environmental programs. And obviously over the last 20 years with WSP have kind of been tasked with growing this sustainability and climate change team. In terms of my kind of chartership career, I think I became a chartered engineer in about 2001, and then became a chartered environmentalist in about 2005. And for me, it was a really important milestone to become that chartered environmentalist, mainly because I'd kind of made that transition from going from providing engineering advice to working with the same sector, but providing more sustainability advice. And everyone around me in WSP had an environmental management degree or an environmental-based MSc. And so for me, it's a bit like Phil said at the start, it's that credibility. It's saying that you understand that sector, not only from my engineering technical background, but also from, that I understand the sustainability and the environmental challenges that they face. So that was the main reason that I pursued the Chartered Environmentalist status, if you like. But there's other reasons I think it's a good idea, CPD being one of them. So over the last 20 years, just being able to access the resources and tools, be part of a network of like-minded people has been incredibly important. Probably don't spend as much time as I should on CPD, but, I do end up going to, the IChemE website with its sustainability hub, but also the Society of Environment for their resources as well. And that's been invaluable to me over the last 20 years or so. Another two areas is I put here key roles and projects. And for me, especially working in a consultancy, we work on some quite major projects with some high profile clients. And I certainly know from my experience, having that Chartered Environmentalist registration has given me access to roles on projects that I probably wouldn't have access to otherwise. So things like working on HS2, working on HyNet, for example, to become the technical lead in a particular area, the client requires, certain qualifications, but also certain professional accreditations. And Chartered Environmentalist is up there quite high on the list. I've also got stand out from the crowd, and I guess by this I mean more for people listening today who are thinking of maybe applying for the chartership. I certainly know, as somebody now leading a team and constantly sifting through CVs and looking for new talent, having that chartered environmentalist on your CV is incredibly important to make you stand out from the crowd. I mean, the kind of talent pool of people out there now is incredibly strong, and you can see that people are really tooling themselves up to kind of make that little bit of difference. And certainly in my profession, for those maybe wanting to follow a similar route into kind of consultancy and the environment sector, then having that chartered environmentalist status is really important and makes a difference. So yeah, I mean, just to summarize, I would say the 4 key reasons, for me, has been that kind of professional credibility, access to really good CPD resources, having access to, or being able to then access key roles on projects, which has helped my kind of professional development, and I would say a way of standing out from the crowd as well. Thank you, Steve. Or Phil.
Thanks, Sejal. I'll hand over to Caireen now, please.
Great, thanks, Sejal. Really interesting to hear your experience from that sort of consultancy career path. And thanks, Phil and Steve, for the intro. So as Steve said, my name's Caireen Hargreaves, and I work in AstraZeneca's global sustainability function. And as a chemical engineer, I think it's now about 25 years I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry and held roles in manufacturing, research and development. But for most of my career, I've been based in our global safety, health and environment team. So I lead AstraZeneca's product environmental sustainability team currently, so driving strategic efforts to ensure the environmental safety of our products across the value chain. And we work with key business functions, and my team apply life cycle thinking across product value chains to identify and then address significant environmental impacts. So just thinking for myself how the Chartered Environmentalist registration has helped me, actually very similar to Sejal, I applied for a Chartered Environmentalist registration in about 2005, and that was at a similar time that I attained Chartered Engineer status. I'd recently completed an international assignment to Sweden in our global SHE function, and that was leading environmental assessment for our pipeline portfolio of development products. And to be honest, one of the reasons I applied is the application process was very straightforward. So it seemed a really logical step in my career, as I'd certainly specialised in environmental sustainability aspects and been taking on more senior roles in that area. And I feel that getting the Chartered Environmentalist registration really cemented my career moving in that direction and acted as a springboard to give more senior and management roles in the environmental sustainability field within AstraZeneca. And this direction opens up a wide range of opportunities for me. So, for example, progressing through to be a certified ISO 14001 lead auditor on our company program. And that gave me the opportunity to visit many of our global manufacturing sites around the world. I've also been involved in key interactions, trying to influence our senior executive team and board members as we develop the company's ambitious environmental sustainability strategy and programs. And these have been showcased at global events in recent years, such as the World Economic Forum in Davos and the international climate change conferences, so COP26 and COP27, that have been held in the last couple of years. So thinking about proving environmental competence and why that's important for chemical engineers, I really passionately believe that chemical engineers are a natural fit for many environmental sustainability roles. And I think as these topics become much more mainstream, it's important that we have professionals who understand how to analyze holistically and have that chemical engineering, process engineering mindset of whole system thinking. So just as an example to illustrate from the pharmaceutical sector, the questions I and my team are often challenged with are, what are we doing to reduce packaging or remove the paper insert patient information leaflet, for example? And of course, there might be small improvements to make here, but by applying life cycle assessment methodology, we actually know based on data that these are not significant hotspots across our product value chains. And much more significant impacts can be made through looking at, say, the chemical synthesis of manufacturing the active pharmaceutical ingredient, looking at opportunities to embed circularity and reduce environmental impact, maybe through solvent recycling, exploring bio-based rather than fossil-derived materials, and innovative technologies such as continuous processing. And I'm sure that many chemical engineers across all sectors, and especially those on this call, are making these analyses regularly just to identify the most fruitful opportunities to pursue. And I think if chemical engineers within companies register as chartered environmentalists and then share this across the company community and more widely, then this showcases opportunities for early career chemical engineers to be involved in projects with a strong environmental focus and gives them a pathway to achieve chartered environmentalist. And then thinking a bit more broadly outside my sector, I think attracting and retaining talent is really key. I read an article recently in Business Green about climate quitting. There's a new phrase that seems to be emerging, and a recent survey by KPMG had revealed that 1 in 3 young people have rejected a job offer over an employer's perceived weak environmental, social governance credentials. And I think by building credibility and demonstrating that organizations value environmental competence, I believe this will ensure continued talented colleagues are entering the field across many organizations. I think similar to Sejal, the Chartered Environmentalist recognition is really important in working with colleagues of different disciplines. While many of us working in this field may not have a degree specifically in environmental science, I think our expertise, experience, and continued professional development in this area is recognized. And for myself, leading a multidisciplinary and global team of ecotoxicologists, chemists, chemical engineers, environmental scientists, biologists, this is really important. And then thinking more in the engineering space, in 2020, I was honored to be named as one of the top 50 women in engineering sustainability by the Women's Engineering Society. And following that, I've joined the WES Climate Emergency Group, and I'm working alongside many inspiring female engineers of all disciplines to share best practice from within academia and different industry sectors to respond to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including climate action, but also many other of the SDGs. And one other perspective I have working in a corporate is that companies often demonstrate their sound approach through benchmarking schemes, such as the Dow Jones Sustainability Index or CDP, which is a not-for-profit charity that runs the global disclosure system for companies who manage their environmental impacts. It's the benchmark for good management in the areas of climate, water, forests, supply chain. And I see the Chartered Environmentalist registration as a bit of a parallel, actually, for professionals working in this field. So just coming back to the healthcare sector where I work, obviously. So in totality, this contributes around 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And over the coming years, we're going to need to work with an even more diverse range of disciplines to progress the journey towards net zero healthcare. We're going to need to influence healthcare professionals, physicians, nurses, procurement professionals, pharmacists, health economists, and I think many others. And so this benchmark for environmental topic competence, I think, will become much more important. So I just encourage others listening today on the call to take the opportunity for registering for the Chartered Environmentalist. I think the world faces unprecedented environmental challenges at the moment with the climate and biodiversity emergencies. And I strongly believe chemical engineers have a really important role to play in addressing these. So I'll finish there and I'll hand over to Alan, who's the next speaker.
Hello, I'm Alan and I'm a chartered environmental professional. The term environmentalist is a little loaded because a lot of people look on environmentalists as basically tree huggers. We are professionals. I hold my CEnv through the IChemE. I could hold it through other bodies, but I've chosen the IChemE. And it's one of a number of chartered registrations that I have. First, a couple of declarations. For a short time, I actually worked for AstraZeneca, between working for Zeneca and Avicea. And in fact, I worked for those 3 different companies without changing my desk. Back in the 90s, there was great press for environmental safeguards improvement. I was privileged to be part of this. A lot of it was trying to work in partnership with our regulators, with our suppliers, and with professional bodies. My first environmental job, I think, was 1979, when I made gas scrubbers more reliable. Trivial piece of work, but it did increase the reliability and safety of one of our plants. Since then, I've worked in mainly the fine chemical industry, and then I was given, when I retired from industry, I started lecturing at Heriot-Watt University. As part of that, they seconded me as technical manager to the National Industrial Symbiosis Program, and later to the Environmental Sustainability KTN. So I managed to bridge industry, academia, and knowledge transfer. I found that immensely satisfying because you could see where you made a difference very quickly. I should also point out that I am actually the honorary secretary of the Society for the Environment. So you would expect me to advocate CEnv. In addition to that, I've been involved in a lot of governance issues. You'll see that a lot of the stuff in the serious newspapers, financial press, that sort of thing, are talking about ESG, environment, social, and governance. These all go together, and good environmental performance is good business, because you save money by not using so much material, not producing so much waste, and in the process of doing environmental studies, you actually learn a lot more about your processes, both business and chemical. So, what benefits have I had? It's quite interesting who you meet through Society for the Environment. Just to drop a few names, the King is one of our honorary fellows. He was awarded that some years ago for his work in environmental advocacy. The Secretary of State for the Environment, Therese, has actually been at a number of our events and has run the gauntlet of skeptical environmental professionals. The question we ask is, who actually advises the people who make the democratically moderated decisions. Why is a lot more attention being paid to pop stars, film stars and their children than is being apparently paid to people who know what they're doing? Knowing what you're doing is key. Chartered status, which is recognized throughout the world, is based on professional organizations working together to form registration bodies. They are recognized through the Privy Council with Royal Charters. A Royal Charter is something that gives you a significant amount of independence. It would take a full act of the UK Parliament to interfere with what you're doing. So it can be shown that people with chartered status in engineering, science, physics, whatever, do have competence and have independence. So we can be expected to tell the truth. Those of you who apply through the IChemE will have used forms which are very similar to the CEnv application. I don't know if Steve is going to talk you through that later. We are expecting an equivalent knowledge to level 7 on the ECTFE scale. That's broadly equivalent to a master's. You don't actually have to have either an integrated or a postgraduate master's degree. You have to demonstrate your competence. Unlike other countries, you don't get the professional registration by taking a degree and waiting so many years. You have to demonstrate your competence. That's what makes British chartered qualification gold standard for the world. So I think it's fair to say that I have enjoyed my work in the environment. As you can see, I might be considered as a late career environmentalist. And I do a lot of my work in looking at the competence of individuals and also how professional bodies assess that competence. So I'm going to now hand over to the next speaker.
Thanks, Alan. Good afternoon, everyone. My thanks to Phil, Steve and Claire for the invite today to the IChemE Spotlight webinar. I'm going to take you through my career so far, and then I'm going to talk to you about how Chartered Environmentalist registrations helped myself. Probably like a lot of chemical engineers, my career started with chemistry. Actually, my chemistry teacher sending me to the University of Strathclyde CheMeng Open Day. And from there, I was hooked on studying chemical engineering. I graduated in '96, started work as a process engineer with British Aerospace, now BAE Systems. And I was helping to manufacture a wide range of chemicals with really considerable environmental aspects and impacts. And at the same time, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency was formed to protect and improve the environment as Scotland's principal environmental regulator. And I was asked by the site leader to focus my work on helping our site manage the environmental impact. And as a chemical engineer, I felt very well placed to offer advice on resource efficiency, or waste minimisation, as we called it back then, and multimedia pollution prevention and control techniques. As Caireen noted in her presentation, chemical engineers are really a natural fit for solving environmental challenges. I really believe that. During my chemical engineering course, I studied air and water pollution control, heat transfer, chemistry, separation processes, and economics. So I felt prepared to understand the relationship between chemistry, technology, and solutions to minimise environmental impact. So that, I guess, whetted my appetite. And from that experience, it gave me the passion to protect the environment. And I started a part-time MSc in process technology and management with a primary focus on clean technologies. It also shaped the next step in my career, which was joining a company called Barron Ray, a process engineering house. And that's where I focused on delivering environmental solutions for industrial businesses. At Barron Ray, I used my chemical engineer knowledge and skills to design effluent treatment solutions for a wide range of industrial sectors, such as food and drink, chemicals, engineering, pharma, and many more. And then from there, I joined Mabit, which is a new environmental consultancy. Well, it was new in 2000, as a senior environmental engineer, and I had the appetite to gain greater experience and diversity in a wider range of environmental engineering services. So with about 4 years experience on my CV, I applied to become a Chartered Environmentalist in about 2000, same as Sejal, and probably similar to Sejal, I became an Chartered Environmentalist through IChemE. Thanks to the diversity and strength of my experience and the role responsibility I had at the time. And I was certainly first among my peers to hold Chartered Environmentalist, so it was very new back in 2005. What was important to me was that I felt the Chartered Environmentalist status was important to complement my Chartered Engineering status to demonstrate my skills as a chemical engineer, focused environmental matters, while also being a competent chemical engineer. I've since gone on to help my company grow, Mabit, to grow to over 120 staff. And we're one of the leading employers of Chartered Environmentalists in Scotland and the UK. What's interesting is my staff come from a wide range of academic backgrounds, whether that's geography to chemical engineering, geology to environmental science, and they work in a wide variety of environmental service areas. And that can cover environmental engineering, contaminated land, air quality, environmental noise, environmental planning, and energy management. But the one thing that unites us all together is our professional memberships and our passion for becoming or being a Chartered Environmentalist. So I guess the question there is, why do we want to become a Chartered Environmentalist? So I'll speak about the benefits I see. I think they're multifaceted, I think, in relation to myself. First of all, I think it gave me a professional confidence, a sort of badge of honour, if you like, to show my peers, clients, colleagues, and any other stakeholders that I had attained a high level of skill and experience in my field. And I agree with, I think it was Sejal that mentioned, particularly important as a consultant, you're constantly trying to prove yourself to others who you're employed to support. I also think it helped me progress in my career, with chartered status becoming a prerequisite for many of the roles within consulting. Indeed, many of the clients or contracts that we work on, they're required to be signed off by a chartered professional. So I think Chartered Environmentalist helps tick that box as well. And without question, it's helped me to grow our business by winning new contracts, by supporting our responses to invitations to tender and requests for quotations. I think it sets a minimum standard of professional competence, which I think is well received by industry. It's also, out with of being if you like, a chemical engineer, it's also supported me gain additional roles outside my day job, if you like. And since 2009, I've been a visiting professor at the University of Strathclyde, with a focus on developing more sustainable related modules for chemical engineers, trying to move away from oil and gas and petrochemical top-heavy modules. I've developed modules including environmental engineering for solving industrial challenges, environmental engineering ethics and sustainability, and industrial effluent treatment. But I feel a strong requirement for holding that role is recognised qualifications, and I think Chartered Environmentalist is perfect for that, for ticking that box. I'm absolutely convinced that I wouldn't have been considered, never mind successful, if I didn't hold the Chartered Environmentalist registration. I've also been asked to join Renfrewshire Chamber of Commerce as a board director to cover the themes of SMEs because of my business experience, and also sustainability because I was a Chartered Environmentalist. So again, another strength. But finally, and perhaps more importantly for me, it's helped me to help others. Through my knowledge of the application process, becoming a chartered engineer, then a chartered environmentalist, interviewer with IChemE, it's helped me to mentor others to achieve chartered environmentalist status. And let's face it, the more chartered environmentalists, the quicker we'll achieve our common goal of developing a more sustainable world. Thanks for listening. Please get in touch if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Steve, are you okay for me to continue with questions and answers and so on?
Yeah, that's great. I just want to thank all the speakers. There's
Absolutely.
really thought-provoking and interesting content there. So I really do appreciate your time and putting that together. So yes, Phil, are you happy to take us through the questions then?
Absolutely, and I wholeheartedly agree with your comments. It was an excellent range of insights from the individuals we have on the call now, but also the fact that most of you mentioned the people that you've worked with and the huge range of environmental expertise that are out there that you work alongside. So hopefully that shows an even broader depth of opportunity for people that are watching this to gain experience or to move into different roles with an environmental focus. So it's really, really interesting to hear. So we're going to have a look at some questions. If you do have questions, please use the Q&A function in your toolbar, and we'll try and get around to as many as we can before 1:30 UK time. Now, I'm going to start off with a question from, you may remember that when you registered for the webinar, we asked you if you had a question for our speakers. So I'm going to go back to that and ask one of those questions to begin with. So, does having Chartered Environmentalist registration influence and increase collaboration across industry sustainability targets? And if so, how? So a collaboration question. Do any of our speakers like to give an idea of how CEnv might have helped with collaboration? Feel free to come in.
Let me point out that CEnvs are not just IChemE. You will have CEnvs in Royal Society of Chemistry. There are, I think, 3 out of the 4 big engineering institutions. So essentially, you've already got a common ground. You can assume that the person who is working in mechanical engineering or civil engineering is competent, and that gives you confidence in working with them. You will meet them at CPD events, conferences, and socially. So this means it is much easier to work with. It's not a club, but it's a way that we have of working together by having respect and esteem for each other. Okay.
Thanks, Alan. Did anybody else want to come in there and mention how CEnv registration has helped?
I think for me, Phil, as I mentioned in my presentation, our consultancy and probably some of the other speakers' teams were multidisciplinary, but that Chartered Environmentalist brings us together. And I think that network in itself has helped us solve some really complex environmental challenges where, you know, maybe a project begins with an environmental audit, but then it requires maybe chemical engineers working with environmental scientists, working with geoenvironmental engineers. So I think the network that the Chartered Environmentalists have is really powerful for bringing the different environmental disciplines together to solve the challenges that we're facing.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would agree with that as well, Phil. I mean, obviously, similar to Derek, the consultancy that I work in has that pool of different technical backgrounds, but then you have this additional pool of expertise through the Society of Environment as well, through the kind of Chartered Environmentalists. So that access, as I mentioned in my presentation, from a CPD perspective, or just that link to that wider community has been really quite valuable for me.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a plug here that WSP and Mabbott are both Chartered Environmentalist Employer Champions with the Society for the Environment as well. So it's fantastic to hear.
Didn't know that.
Didn't know that. Well, there you go. And, we'll have a chat about that afterwards, shall we? So it's good to hear those areas of insights. Now, sticking with the theme of multidisciplinary nature of Chartered Environmentalist registration, another question that came in beforehand was, is CEnv appropriate to someone who, is CEnv appropriate to someone who, for whom environment is only part of their role, if I can put my words in. And I think that's fairly appropriate for maybe quite a few chemical engineering members. So with the IChemE, would it be right to say that chemical engineering generally would be possibly classed as their core role, and then they work within environment? Caireen, you can't mute.
I can jump in there. I mean, we obviously have a lot of process engineers and chemical engineers within the company, and I think with AstraZeneca and many pharma companies, I'm sure fine chemical companies, environmental sustainability commitments, you absolutely don't need to be doing an environmental role full time, because process engineers are looking at process safety aspects, obviously the environmental impact, quality, cost of goods. But I think it is a major part of what the chemical engineers in AstraZeneca do. So I would absolutely encourage, even if it's not 100% of your role, you have such an impact in terms of identifying those opportunities for environmental impact reduction and driving those through, looking at innovative technologies. So I would urge people, even if you're not in an environmental role, you should look at the opportunities that Chartered Environmentalists, and as has been talked about by the other speakers, the CPD opportunities, the training materials, and just the credibility that offers you.
Absolutely, and it's very much part of the way that the Society for the Environment is set up.
What CEnv says is that you are a professional, a competent professional who can work in the environment. A lot of the skills that you require to get CEnv are portable between different disciplines. So it's not, it doesn't restrict you, it doesn't put you in a silo.
Absolutely. Derek, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I'd probably say that we all have a role in society to protect the environment, and I can't think of a single role of a chemical engineer that doesn't impinge on the environment somehow. And one of the core competencies for chartered engineer has an environmental element to it, but I don't think we can get away. I don't think we should separate the two. I would encourage everybody to become a chartered environmentalist as well as chartered engineer, because we're all going to have to work together to solve the challenges ahead. So I think they're linked. Phil was my comment.
And if I can just add to that, I mean, I've certainly seen a shift in consultancy, for example, over the last 20 years, whereas, I kind of made that conscious decision at the time 20 years ago to go from engineering into more sustainability. I would say some of the architects and structural engineers that I work with were probably quite separate from their kind of cohort in kind of structural engineering when they moved more into sustainability. But now, people are coming out of university as a process engineer with that already built in, with that kind of sustainability and that sustainable approach already being business as usual, really. So although I've got a part of the business that is very much focused on sustainability, we've got people within our MEP and our engineering businesses that consider carbon as part of the design of the building or as part of building a process facility. So it's right across the building, right across the consulting piece, and it's embedded as part of the thought process for a lot of professions now.
Absolutely. I'm going to move straight on to another question, if that's okay, to try and get as many answers as we can. One quick one, which just disappeared on my screen. Where did that just go? But the question was, can I be a chartered environmentalist and a chartered engineer? I can answer that quickly. Absolutely. You definitely can. And the follow-up question to that was, do you have to be a chartered engineer to apply for chartered environmentalist registration through IChemE? And there's a possibility that maybe Steve or I mean, Alan as well might know this. And
Well,
David's on the call as well. So
certainly, the standards for chartered chemical engineer, and that's the IChemE's own qualification, MIChemE or FIChemE, are similar and of the same general standard as chartered environmentalist. To become a chartered environmentalist through the IChemE, you have to be MNSP. You have to be a chemical engineer. You can take CEnv at the same time if you wish. But you would get your main membership, and then you would go through the application procedure for chartered environmentalist. Conveniently, the forms and so on are very similar. The competences, what we call the A and B competences, are different for a chemical engineer and an environmentalist process engineer, but they are quite similar. The other, call them portable and professional competences, are pretty common between all the qualifications. So join IChemE as a chartered member and then apply for a chartered environmentalist.
okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much. There are obviously different routes to becoming chartered environmentalist, registered as a chartered environmentalist, but that's the way forward for IChemE members. Let's move on to a different question. How important is CEnv registration in other parts of the world? Because in small industries in a third world country, a chemical engineer who is willing to make a change is unable to take up CEnv. Now, I could answer a quick point on that. You can become a chartered environmentalist anywhere in the world. So it doesn't matter if you're based in a third world country or wherever it might be. There are chartered environmentalists across the globe. And if you wanted to become a chartered environmentalist via IChemE, I imagine that would be a possibility. It doesn't matter about where you're based. But in terms of how important it is, do any of the speakers have examples of how they've worked abroad or worked with organisations, clients abroad who have recognised CEnv registration?
We do, yeah. We work with some multilateral banks, the EBRD and the World Bank, for example, where they're looking to invest in infrastructure projects overseas. And I know that we get instructed by the client, so the client that's building a process facility, for example, or for building a road, it's them that actually check our CVs, and so having that chartered environmentalist professional accreditation does actually make a difference. So sometimes they actually stipulate that they want a certain level of professional accreditation from the consultancy team, and so that has played a part in the past for me. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to skip on to another question. I hope that's okay. We have somebody asked a question who is a chartered scientist, a chartered chemical engineer, and a chartered engineer, and they want to become a chartered environmentalist. Fantastic, good news. How do I start the application process? That's potentially a question for Steve or one of the IChemE team. I think Steve possibly just answered by typing as well.
I'll be very honest, and while I was smiling a moment ago, we're doing a double act. So David Lloyd Roach, our Director of Qualifications, is answering in the chat mode. So that's why I was smiling.
I see.
He's saying I can take all the credit, which I would never do. But yes, I think he's just answered that. But at the moment, we are going through changes to our application process, but we are setting it up so that by a simple email contact, we can start the process with anyone that's interested. So I think David's been answering that in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I didn't realize there was an undercover double act going on, but it's a good idea to take the credit. Next question is back to our special guest speakers. Could the group share what kind of environmental or sustainability CPD they have found the most valuable? Where have you found useful CPD? Who would like to come into that one? Caireen?
Yeah, I can kick off, Phil. I mean, I think one area, if anyone's working in that sort of pharmaceutical value chain space, and this comes back slightly to the collaboration question earlier, is we work in the pharma industry in a pre-competitive way with our pharma peer companies. One organization that's very active is called the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Initiative, and that's been set up to try and promote, among other principles, the principle of environmental protection. So that organization has created a lot of training resources, maturity models. There's webinars available there. So for anyone working in a pharma company or in a supplier to a pharma company, there's some great material there, and it's very specific, for example, around aspects like pharmaceuticals in the environment and how to assess safe levels and so on. So that just a shout out for the PSCI resources. If you Google it, you should be able to find that organization.
Fantastic. Any other top tips for CPD?
I would say the Sustainability Hub on the IChemE is very, very good. So, and I just completed, I think it's the LCA life cycle assessment course on there. So yeah, that's just growing in strength at the moment in terms of access to courses, so worth flagging.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. A specific question on the application. Could you advise the cost of CEnv registration in addition to IChemE membership? And I've seen the response there, which I believe was from David Lloyd Roach. The charge for CEnv registration in 2023 will be £96 for a new registrant, and then each year after that, currently it is £48 for the renewal. So that's an annual renewal. That price does tends to change year on year, but that gives you a bit of an idea of the costs involved. Now, could you advise the route and time frame for a CEnv and IChemE to register as a Chartered Environmentalist? Now, I believe again that David's probably answered that. I'm going to have to get David on to speak and respond himself, possibly. But I'll read out his answer. You will need to complete a CEnv professional review to demonstrate the required competencies. It is likely that the process from application to result will be around 3 months when the process is relaunched. Right, so it is 1:30. So we will draw the webinar to a close, but thank you very much for all of your questions, and a huge thank you to every single one of our special guest speakers today. It's been extremely useful to hear your insights, and we hope to very much see you guys again soon. For those who are interested in becoming a Chartered Environmentalist via IChemE, I think I'll probably hand over to Steve if you've got any closing words in relation to that.
Yes, it is a pretty straightforward process to make that initial contact. Just contact us through members@icheme.org, and then one of our membership team will respond and come back and start to establish your individual requirements. So that's members@icheme.org. You can see that on our website as well. So there's a whole area there that you can have a look at. But yes, the membership team will be able to advise on the next stages once they've reviewed your individual circumstances.
Fantastic. Well, in that case, thank you again to all the people who are involved in the webinar today and creating it and making it happen. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to everyone who joined us as attendees, participants. It's been really useful to have your questions and try and answer them. If you do have more questions, then please try and get in touch with the team at IChemE or indeed the Society for the Environment, and we'll try and be as helpful as we possibly can. So thank you very much for your interest and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you.